Protesters gather outside Barrie City Hall to demand that the Ontario provincial government fund a proposed supervised consumption site in Barrie. The Simcoe County branch of the Canadian Mental Health Association decided to withdraw the application after waiting for over 2 years for the provincial approval. The previous city council, under Mayor Jeff Lehman, endorsed the proposal in 2021. The federal government approved the application in 2022 by granting an exemption to a section of the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. The federal approval was further renewed in 2023. During the protest, community leaders including former Barrie councillor and harm reduction worker Keenan Aylwin and co-founder of Ryan's Hope, Nayler, spoke demanding immediate funding from the province. Following is the video of the event.
My name's Ashley or Ash, and you may have seen me around making a fool out of myself for Ryan's Hope, or making noise for ones who have been silenced. I, like many of you here, have been destroyed personally by this drug war, and my list keeps growing. I plan to come to these events because it is up to us, the people, to create the change we need. It is up to us to stand together to heal our world. With that being said, I would like to introduce our first speaker. This woman is a warrior, a fierce advocate, and has one of the biggest hearts I've ever seen. She inspires me every day and has done wonders for our community. She has shown us what community means and how powerful it can be. She is the co-founder and director of Ryan's Hope. Her and her husband Tom founded Ryan's Hope in memory of their son Ryan, who lived with mental illness and lost his life on November 29, 2020 to toxic drug poisoning. Ryan's Hope's mission is to advocate for and support those living with mental illness, struggling with addiction, and experiencing homelessness. This powerful woman provides boots on the ground support and is a powerful voice for change, advocating with all levels of government for change to laws and policies that continue to harm and oppress our most vulnerable. She is a force to be reckoned with. My beautiful aunt, Reverend Christine Nayler.
Okay. I don't know if I can hold this in right. Can you hear me without? Can you hear me without it, or is it better if I talk?
Yes, better.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna say it like this. Bell Hooks asked the question: how do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing, and yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed? This is a question I struggle with in my advocacy. I rightly carry a lot of anger at politicians for failed policies that contributed to Ryan's death. They have the power to change things, but what they lack is courage and conviction. How do we hold those in power accountable without alienating them? If we approach them as the enemy, they will not be open to hearing what we have to say, and then nothing changes. I truly believe that the way we will change policy, end stigma, and save lives is through humanization of the issues, by sharing the truth of our lived experience. We can do this individually, person to person, in one-on-one conversations, and collectively through events and actions such as tonight. We also need to learn how and when to channel and express our anger. That can be hard at times, especially when we are passionate about what we are fighting for. This has been a challenge for me this week. I was away this weekend visiting my grandchildren in Ottawa. When I arrived home Monday afternoon, the first message that I read was from a reporter wanting a quote from me about the news release stating that Barrie's SCS application was being withdrawn. I hadn't even heard this news yet, and I was being asked for a response. It took a while after I found the article to process what I had just read and to be able to express what I felt in words. What I felt was anger, outrage, despair, sadness, fear, and defeat. So much welled up inside of me as I fought back tears and resisted to the urge to curse and swear. 6 years of our community working so hard to bring a local SCS to reality, and in an instant, all that work was just gone. How? Why? Because of political cowardice, because of ignorance and arrogance. I wanted to scream from the rooftops, but instead I retreated to my bedroom to cry. But sometimes the most honest response is to swear. So I did. In the privacy of my home, I let my anger out. I cursed Doug Ford and his narrow-minded minions. I cursed them for leaving our application in a drawer collecting dust, ignoring the lives we were losing in our community, ignoring the cost that was accumulating for the applicants. I cursed them for playing politics with the lives of our loved ones, to score points politically, not just in Barrie, but across the province. I'm angry, and I have the right to be. In May 2024, there were 16 suspected drug-related deaths in Simcoe County. In 2023, 53 people lost their lives in Barrie to suspected drug poisonings. So far in 2024, 26 people have lost their lives to suspected drug-related deaths in our community already. Across the province, Hamilton had to withdraw their SCS application. SCSs in Windsor and Sudbury had to close because the province withheld funding and they couldn't hold on any longer without that financial support. Doug Ford has said he supports the Alberta model and wants to replicate it here in Ontario, despite it being a complete disaster. This model has resulted in increased drug-related deaths, forced treatment, and the government is funding an abstinence-based treatment model that is privately run for profit. These centers are abstinence-based. The evidence tells us that forced treatment doesn't work, and in many cases, it kills. The Ontario government continues to ignore the experts and evidence. Since Doug Ford took office, not one SCS has been approved in the province of Ontario, and 2 have closed due to lack of funding. The Ontario government's failure to address the toxic drug crisis as what it is, a public health emergency, has cost countless lives. They treat the lives of people who use drugs as less valuable and as disposable. The Ontario government has blood on its hands. Sadly, there has been a concentrated, collective effort by conservatives across the country to play politics with the lives of vulnerable populations through the spreading of misinformation and lies. Our country is going backwards, not forwards, in drug policy at the expense of vulnerable Canadians. BC has recriminalized simple possessions of drugs, and cities across the country, including ours, are ignoring their own evidence and have begun cracking down on public drug use, thus putting people at increased risk of overdose deaths due to using alone and in isolation. The federal Liberal government is no better. They have ignored their own task force recommendations, refusing to take the steps they know will reduce drug deaths and help keep people alive. And why? Politics. They have been taking polls across the country on public opinion related to safe supply and decriminalization. For no other health issue does the government conduct polling to get the public's opinion. They listen to the experts and they act on the evidence to save lives. So why is it different than with this public health emergency? Stigma. We as a society moralize some drugs while accepting and glorifying others. People who use drugs, whose drug of choice is alcohol or cannabis, have access to a safe, regulated supply. But for those whose drug of choice is different, they are denied the same basic right, putting their lives at risk every time they consume their drug of choice. The war on drugs is actually a war on people. People we as a society continue to deem as disposable. We lose 22 Canadians a day due to failed drug policy. In total, we have lost over 42,000 Canadians to toxic drugs, and every single one of them was somebody's someone. Their child, their sibling, their parent, their spouse, their friend, and every single one of them, their lives matter. The total count of the casualties of this failed war is much higher, and it remains unmeasured. Those living with the irreversible brain damage due to drug-related injuries, the family and friends whose lives were forever altered by the death of a loved one, and the frontline workers and first responders with boots on the ground responding to this public health emergency on a daily basis, who now live with PTSD and lifelong trauma. Why are we not more outraged by this? Why are only few people speaking out about this public health emergency? Those of us who have experienced the life-changing effects of this crisis firsthand cannot be silent. We have been called to speak truth to power. But that call comes with a high cost above what we have already paid. Heroes in harm reduction are becoming targets, being doxxed, threatened with loss of employment, and receiving death threats. Highly respected Safe Supply Dr. Andrea Sedera has been continuously threatened and harassed, and now she is facing calls for her medical license to be revoked. Vancouver Drug Users Liberation Front's Jeremy Ketchcom and Eris Nias are facing drug trafficking charges for stepping up to save lives after years of government failure to address the toxic drug supply. These men are heroes, risking imprisonment as they operated a compassionate club for drug users. And Mom Stop the Harm advocates and harm reduction workers across the country are being harassed and threatened. Vocal advocates are being targeted to scare the rest of us into silence, but we cannot let them win. We fought too hard for the small gains we have achieved to have them taken away from us. Now is the time for us to stand up. It is the time for us to show up louder and more united than ever. Together we can change policy, end stigma, and save lives. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is another fierce advocate who is known for calling out the police department and advocating for justice in our city, including defunding the police. He helped me out with lending his bullhorn at the End Homelessness March, which was a key in making our voices heard. He believes everyone has a role to play in creating a better community. I introduce to you Michael Spears.
Thank you, Ash. You guys all hear me? Good? Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank Christine, the organizers of this event, for allowing me to come and talk to you about policing. More specifically, the harm that policing and our police force's massive budget does to our city and our community. I think you can tell that I'm not a fan of policing. Why is that? Well, because police are simply not very valuable when it comes to preventing crime, helping people, or providing solutions to crises currently affecting people in our community. They don't support, they punish. After all, the police were created by the ruling class to keep working people, the poor, Indigenous, and racialized people in line. It's a job description that still applies today. We are told that the police are bringers of justice, that they are here to help maintain social order. The neutral enforcement of the law sets us all free, so they say. This understanding of policing, however, is largely mythical. Police function as a tool for managing deeply entrenched inequalities in a way that systematically produces injustices to the poor and socially marginal. We see this on the streets of Barrie every day. As Noam Chomsky said, if you don't have wealth, if you don't have power, then you don't have rights. It's the way the world works. Your rights correspond to your power and your wealth. To contextualize this for Barrie, an unhoused person living downtown simply doesn't have the same rights as someone living in a nice single-family two-car garage home in Painswick. This is the reality in Barrie. Police are designed to protect the person living in Painswick or the East End or wherever, at the expense of the person who might be struggling somewhere else, such as those living rough or living in an encampment. Yet, despite these glaring faults and inadequacies, we've seen the Barrie police budget continue to increase year after year. The budget is now more than $67 million a year. Do you ever wonder why politicians keep approving these budgets? After all, numerous studies have shown that giving more money to the police doesn't actually lower the crime rate or prevent crime. Whether it's last year's study by the University of Toronto at the Upstream Lab or the 2014 study conducted by both organizations, the Fraser Institute, research conducted by these organizations on both ends of the political spectrum have found no consistent correlations between police spending and municipal crime rates. Of course, police and our politicians argue that residents in so-called high-crime communities demand police action. What is left out, though, is that these communities also ask for libraries, better transit, better infrastructure, better services, just to name a few. But these things are rarely provided. Modern policing can, therefore, only be seen as a war on the poor that does little to make people safer or communities stronger. And even when it does, this is accomplished through coercive forms of power that damages lives. Handing over millions of dollars to the police every year is equal to criminalizing people. It's the city basically saying they want to punish people and they're going to use the power of the state to do it. Here in Barrie, we've asked police to solve society's problems, and they will keep trying to do that by using oppression and violence. But we must not allow them to keep doing it. What is missing from our city's current approach to police funding is any critical assessment of what the city is asking the police to do and whether the police are really the best suited to do it. Spoiler, they're not. The answer is clear, folks. If we were to redirect the millions of dollars that now go to Barrie Police towards things like affordable housing, more shelter spaces, food programs, mental health supports, better and free transit, solutions for the toxic drug crisis, and many more, there would really be no need for police in the first place. And that, my friends, is a critical point. They don't want that reality. As I said before, the ruling class need the police to protect their property. So council, this mayor, the police, and the city's business class continue to silence us or ignore us. How many people knew that the Police Services Board was hearing public deputations last week about next year's police budget? Not very many. Well, that's because they only notified the community 2 days before deputation requests were due. They scheduled a meeting at 8 a.m. on a Thursday at the police station. And the mayor decided to not even attend the meeting. Second year in a row he's done that. You see, they don't want to listen to the truth. They want to silence criticism so they can keep doing what they've been doing. But we know the truth. We know that the criminal justice system excuses and ignores crimes of the rich that produce profound social harms while intensely criminalizing the behaviors of the poor. Our system prioritizes the need for profit over the needs of people. This kind of system needs protection. The police provide that protection. I say no more. We need to invest in each other. It's the only way to build a city that will help meet people's human needs. Now, we've seen a softer image of the police lately, but just let me say that you can dress up officers to look like camp counselors, give them cool-looking off-road vehicles, post their smiling faces on social media all you want. It doesn't change the fact that police are a source of harm and that people in this city are hurting because of them. That's a fact. As sociologist Alex Vitale said in his book, The End of Policing, quote, "A kinder, gentler, and more diverse war on the poor is still a war on the poor," unquote. Support, don't punish, defund the police, invest in community. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Alright. Next up is the only person I've ever met that has called himself a councillor and still has his soul intact. He is one of the kindest souls I have ever met, always doing what he can to help. He is the Linkage to Care Coordinator at the Gilbert Centre and former Barrie City Councillor for Ward 2. He lives and works in downtown Barrie and believes that all people deserve to live a life of dignity with love and support. Please welcome Keenan Aylwin.
When I say, what do we want? You say harm reduction. What do we want?
Harm reduction!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Harm reduction!
When do we want it?
Now!
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Ash, for acknowledging that we are gathered here on the territory of the Anishinaabe people. I think it's particularly important that we acknowledge the history and the ongoing impacts of colonialism, of violent colonialism on this land in the context of the war on drugs. The war on drugs is a racist and a colonial project. And we are here to say no to the racist war on drugs. We are facing an intense, toxic drug crisis here in Barrie. Our friends, our family, our neighbors, our loved ones are dying at an alarming rate. And I know many of you know the grief and the pain and the loss that we feel in our community. That's a direct result of the decisions and the lack of action of our governments at all levels. The people who we have lost in our communities, our loved ones, their lives mattered. Their lives were important. People who use drugs are deserving of dignity, of safety. They're deserving of care. And it's terrifying that we have to remind the people in positions of power of that truth. Of that simple truth that people who use drugs deserve to live, deserve safety, deserve care. But that's what we're up against. People in power, including the right-wing politicians at City Hall, our local members of Parliament, our local members of provincial Parliament, our Premier at Queen's Park, the Liberal government in Ottawa, The people in power are not taking the actions necessary to save lives and make our communities safer. They're defunding, they're attacking harm reduction programs, vital social services in our communities that save lives, that reduce the harms associated with the unregulated drug supply, like supervised consumption sites, like safe supply. We need those services now. Harm reduction is a recognition of the fundamental human dignity of all people. It is a recognition that all people deserve love and support. An attack on harm reduction is an attack on those ideas, and it's an attack on all of us. Politicians like Mayor Nuttall, politicians like Premier Ford, like Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, they're using the lives of our loved ones as scapegoats to win power. And the centrist Liberal politicians in Ottawa, they are folding to the pressure out of fear of losing votes and losing elections. They're trading the lives of people, real people, for power. It's shameful. Criminalizing drugs makes us less safe. The research is clear on that. Not only does punishment and criminalization lead to increased risk of overdose, increased risk of bloodborne infections, increased harms in general, it also leads to increased death, and it funnels millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars away from our communities, away from vital social supports to policing and punishment. It starves our communities of these services while traumatizing and re-traumatizing people, exacerbating crime, perpetuating crime, creating crime, and making all of us less safe. This attack on our communities from the people in power is terrifying, and it seems like it's not going to end anytime soon. But we have the power of evidence, first of all. We have the power of love for our neighbors, for our loved ones, for our family, for our friends on our side. We have to continue the fight for harm reduction services. We need safe supply now. We need supervised consumption sites now. We need housing for all now. We have lost too many people, and these deaths are preventable. So let us say to the mayor, to our MPs, to our MPPs, to the premier, to the prime minister, not one more. 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 Not one more.
Not.
Well, thank you, Keenan. I know you say you hate it, but you're amazing at it. That was awesome. All right, our final speaker is a social worker and peer support leader in Simcoe County who promotes the value of lived experience in building connections. He has seen the powerful results of peer support for himself and in the daily lives of those he has worked with over the years. As the founder of Peer Connect, and he aspires to increase awareness of peer support practices and increase opportunities for men of all ages and backgrounds to connect with one another. He is an amazing example of leading by example. Please welcome Ryan McPhail.
So yeah, first of all, thank you guys all for being here today, because it's movements like this and voices like yours that make a big impact and make changes. So thank you for being here. Christina asked me to come speak about my lived experience story. So I'm just going to speak really briefly to my lived experience with addiction. Then I want to get more into some of that support and no punish piece that we're here to talk about. So just a really short form is, in high school, I started experimenting with different substances, right? Various reasons. If we got into that, we'll be here all night, so I'm not going to get into that. But that substance use quickly evolved, and I started using other drugs. Started with cannabis, then cocaine, then alcohol, and eventually led me to opiates. So, right at the end of high school, I was addicted and dependent on opiates. I needed to take these every day to function. If I didn't have the drugs for the day, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't get up in the morning, no way I could hold a job. I just couldn't function without it. So, this substance use started to spiral out of control. My tolerance would build up more and more, and I would need more and more to feel okay, to feel comfortable in my own skin, to be able to get up in the morning and to be able to function and be happy. And at that time I knew I needed help, but I felt like there was just nowhere to go at that time. I was too ashamed to talk to my parents, too ashamed to talk to my friends or any loved ones about it. Anyone in my life that really cared about me, that could have helped me make a change, I was so afraid of letting them down, and I was ashamed. I didn't want to talk to them about any of that stuff at the time. As the substance use evolved, that feeling of shame, guilt, embarrassment, it pushed me further away from those people who loved me and supported me and had that chance to really help me, give me a chance to get back on track. Thinking back in this time of my life, every person that I was involved with was either selling drugs or doing drugs. And this lifestyle, it ultimately led me to be involved with the justice system. So I was arrested on multiple occasions associated with my addiction. When that legal trouble came, I had no choice but to reach out to my family at that time. I felt like at this point I have nothing left. I have nowhere to turn. I was in way too deep that I didn't know how I would ever get out without support. So when I started to reach out to these supports, my family members, my friends, that's when my life really started to change. So from the beginning, when I told my parents about what was going on, they never looked down on me, they were never ashamed of me, they were never embarrassed by the decisions I was making. They just looked at me and said, "Ryan, how do we help you?" This unconditional love, that was a huge piece of my recovery, and it was something that I didn't feel for quite a long time at that point. The people who I thought I was going to let down from all of this were the same people that they believed in me more than I believed in myself at the time. And that was a huge piece of making me want to make better choices, but also knew that I could live a better life than I was living at that time. So I started attending counseling, started going to groups, started picking up new hobbies, and I started choosing to spend a lot of my time around love and connection. So even though I've been lucky, and trust me, I know I'm very lucky to have the family I have behind me, I'm very grateful to tell you I've been able to stay away from opiates since 2016, but it's still something that impacts my life on a regular basis. I still need to manage my addictive thinking. I still need to put strategies in place to make sure that I stay on the path I'm on, and this path is the path that I want to be on. All of these strategies I'm mentioning, they're all surrounded around love and connection. And that's where this idea for Pure Connects came from. It's in my own personal experience and the experience of people I've gotten to work with over the years, that connection is a huge, huge piece in people's recovery. When someone gets the chance to reconnect with themselves, reconnect with family, reconnect with community supports, reconnect with peers, etc., it starts to become more clear about what that person wants and what they need to make them happy, to make them move forward to the next step. Without changing the conversation to supporting individuals rather than punishing individuals, a lot of these people won't get the opportunity to get reconnected with themselves and make them feel like they want to make that positive change. Real quick, I just want to tell you about something that I think about when I think about support don't punish is the rat park theory. Have you ever heard of that before? Yeah, really briefly, it's just, there was a rat, I'll probably say it a bit wrong, but there's a rat in single cages that had morphine water, laced in their water, and regular water. And there was a study that would be done to monitor addiction and drug use and what we can do to change things. There was a scientist in the late 1980s that built a rat park, which was, instead of one solo cage, they had a 20-story cage where they had 16 to 20 rats in there, different genders, different ages. They had wheels, they had balls, they had stuff to do, stuff to play with. And those two water bottles were still in that cage, and the rats would choose the regular water over that drug-laced water because they had happiness, they had something to do, they had a purpose, they had a reason to live, right? So yeah, that's what makes me think about that supporting piece and bringing some of those ideas, the balls, the connection of community, all of that stuff all together, which really makes a positive impact. Punishing drug users has not stopped or even reduced drug activity because it does not work. It doesn't work. Health, well-being, and harm reduction is becoming a new updated model for treatment because it does work. We know it works. I can verify this through my own personal experiences with addiction and with the people that I get the chance to work with every single day. So let's keep this conversation going, right? Let's use our voices, and let's support, not punish, guys. Let's keep it up. Thank you.
That was the update for now. Thank you for watching.